The joke landed harder than the wine in my glass. We were 3 hours into a dinner party at Mike and Allison's place, the kind where laughter floats in the air like steam off the roast. Everyone had just polished off their second round of drinks when someone, I think it was Kevin, made a crack about dating profiles and blind dates. Harmless enough. Then she chimed in. I could do better blind, she said, grinning, eyes flicking toward me. Seriously, if I lost my vision tomorrow, I'd probably still upgrade. The room erupted. Full volume laughter. Mike even slapped the table. I forced a smile. My face moved the way it was supposed to. Trained muscle memory. But nothing in me laughed. Her hand brushed my shoulder like she was playfully including me in the joke, but the warmth didn't register. I just nodded, lifted my glass, and sipped Cabernet while my ears rang. It wasn't the cruelty of the comment that stung. It was the confidence. She didn't hesitate. Didn't check the room. Didn't glance to see if I was okay with being the punchline. Because of course I was, right? That's who I was to her by then. The safe one, the quiet one, the guy who never bites back. I watched her from across the candlelit table as she tipped her head back and laughed with everyone else. Her cheeks flushed from wine, her eyes sharp and glinting. I used to love that laugh. Now it sounded hollow, bouncing off walls too tight with false affection. Someone poured more wine. The topic shifted. I nodded at the right times, said something forgettable about football. But something had cracked inside me, not loudly, not in rage, just a silent, irreversible snap. Later, while clearing plates, Allison pulled me aside. She's just being playful, you know. Don't let it get to you. I smiled again. She meant well. But that wasn't play. That was performance. And I'd been cast as the fool. That night, as we put on our coats to leave, she leaned in and whispered, "Lighten up. It was a joke." I looked at her then, really looked. Her eyes held no apology, just impatience. I didn't argue, didn't sulk. I just stepped aside and held the door open. It wasn't until we were halfway home, the headlights of passing cars slicing across the windshield, that I realized I hadn't said more than 3 words since she made the joke. And for once, silence didn't feel like weakness. It felt like the beginning of a plan. She scrolled like nothing had happened, one leg tucked under her, boot tapping lightly to music she wasn't listening to. I drove, hands steady on the wheel, eyes following the pattern of streetlights flashing over the hood. Gold, dark, like a metronome ticking off the last seconds of something that once mattered. I didn't speak, neither did she. The silence between us was surgical, clean, deliberate. Her face lit up in the reflection of her phone. Probably another group chat buzzing about the night. She laughed softly at something on screen, not loud, just a breathy exhale through her nose, and I felt it like a slap. Not because she was laughing, but because she wasn't laughing with me. I gripped the wheel tighter, then loosened. No tension. No tells. Just a quiet man driving home next to the woman who'd humiliated him an hour ago with 12 words and a flash of teeth. I could do better blind. It played again, perfectly preserved. The way she said it, rehearsed like a line she'd been waiting to drop, measured just enough to pass as casual. A few months ago, I'd have defended her in my own head. Told myself it was stress, too much wine, maybe she just needed attention. But tonight, I felt no urge to excuse her. I just catalogued. She shifted beside me, angled the phone screen away like it was second nature. I noticed, filed it. At a red light, she finally spoke. "That lasagna was brutal. Mike's gotta stop pretending he can cook." I gave a quiet grunt, non-committal. The light turned green. She didn't look at me, didn't seem to care I hadn't laughed or responded. Just slipped her phone into her bag and leaned her head against the window. "Wake me when we're home," she mumbled. The last time she fell asleep on a drive, I'd reached over and tucked her coat around her legs. Tonight, I adjusted the heat and let her drift off cold. At a stop sign, I looked at her face and profile, relaxed, familiar, detached, and something in me began to shift from pain to clarity. She thought the silence meant surrender. But silence, used properly, is a weapon. I was no longer trying to fix this. I was watching it rot, not angry, not broken, just awake. The joke hadn't come from nowhere. That was the part that gnawed at me during the restless hours that followed. It wasn't a one-off. It was a culmination. I laid there in the dark, her back to me, her breathing slow and steady like nothing had shifted. And I thought of all the small moments, the steady erosion that looked like laughter on the outside but felt like slow acid underneath. There was the housewarming party at her cousin's place last summer. Someone asked how we met, and before I could answer, she jumped in. He trailed me like a lost shadow until I finally said yes. It was either go on a date or start charging him rent. Laughter again. Always laughter. Or the brunch with her old college friends, when she described me as harmless, like a teddy bear, if teddy bears sorted spreadsheets. I remembered the smile I'd forced then, too. The nod. The way I stirred my coffee like I hadn't just been stripped of any dignity. And then there was the night I drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to pick her up from a cancelled work retreat, only for her to greet me with, "Finally! What took you so long? Did you walk?" She called it her love language, sarcasm, said I was too sensitive, that I read too much into everything. But love doesn't humiliate. Not when it's real. I had stood by her, backed her in rooms where she rolled her eyes at me behind my back thinking I couldn't see. I had carried her tired, covered her mistakes, laughed at her barbs until they lost their sting, or so I thought. Now, each memory felt like a breadcrumb, not leading me home, but showing me how far I'd strayed from it. I used to think loyalty meant endurance, that sticking it out proved strength, but tonight I saw the truth. Loyalty without dignity is submission. And somewhere along the line, I'd become complicit in my own belittling. She hadn't just made me the joke, I'd let her. Not anymore. She stirred beside me, half asleep, muttering something unintelligible before drifting back under. I watched the ceiling, saw nothing. But I didn't need sight to feel what was coming. She'd said she could do better blind. I was about to take her at her word. It started with details so small they almost slipped past me. That's how it always begins, I suppose, not with sirens, but static. She began staying later at work. Meetings ran long. Traffic's a nightmare. Grabbed drinks with a few from the office. Harmless enough. Common even. Except she used to text. Used to call. Now she came home already tired, already emptied. No hug. No spark. Just a perfunctory, "Hey," and then she disappeared into her phone or the shower. The screen became a curtain. Every time I walked into the room, it flipped downward, locked, stowed away. Reflexive. Like a magician hiding her props between tricks. Conversations thinned. We still spoke, of course, about groceries, the dog, the leaking faucet, but the rhythm changed. She wasn't listening anymore. Just reacting, like she was playing her part while reading another script behind her eyes. One night I asked if everything was okay. Just that. A simple question. She looked at me too quickly. "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "Just feels like you've been somewhere else." She gave a sharp breath, not quite a sigh. "It's just work. I'm tired. Don't make it a thing." That was the moment I felt the first real fracture, not because of the words, but because of the tone. She wasn't annoyed. She was disinterested. The next day, she left for the gym around 6:30 p.m. I watched the taillights fade from our driveway, waited 15 minutes, then checked the gym app we both used. She didn't check in. Maybe the scanner was down. Maybe she forgot. Or maybe, just maybe, the gym wasn't where she went. That night, I offered to join her next time. Light tone, casual. She blinked, then gave a short laugh. "You hate gyms." I could try. She kissed my cheek, dry, automatic, and said, "Maybe another time." When she walked away, I watched her, not with suspicion yet, but with something colder. Calculation. That was the real beginning. Not when she told the joke. Not when I stayed quiet in the car. It was the first time I chose not to believe her. I didn't accuse. I didn't demand. That's where most men go wrong, rushing to confront before the foundation is solid. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for certainty. So I started small. I had access to our shared credit card portal. She never changed the password. I told myself it was just a glance, a confirmation that my gut was wrong. But guts don't lie. 2 Fridays back, a charge at Langston Grill, 8:12 p.m. She told me she stayed late to finish quarterly reviews. No mention of dinner, and she never saved the receipt. I opened our calendar. Nothing. Not a friend's birthday. Not a client dinner. Just empty space filled in later with a lie. Saturday, 3 charges at a boutique wine shop. She said she went hiking with Rachel that morning. Maybe they stopped by after. I gave her that one. But a second look at Rachel's Instagram showed her posting from a trail 3 counties away. I moved to her phone backups, not the device itself, but the cloud. She never disabled sync, never thought she had to. Most of it was routine. work chats, group threads. But one name stood out. Carla. I don't know any Carla. Neither did her contacts list. The texts weren't overt. That's what made them clever. Nothing directly damning. But context whispered louder than content. Last night was good. Short window next time, be careful. Work excuse worked again. And then 2 days ago. He doesn't suspect a thing. Same time Friday? I read it twice. My hands didn't shake. My pulse didn't jump. Just a slow, descending quiet. Carla wasn't a woman. Carla was a code. A cover. She'd been staging normalcy while building something behind me. That night, we sat on the couch. She flipped through a streaming menu, feet tucked under her, her voice light as she asked if I wanted to rewatch that old series we liked. I said sure. She smiled, satisfied, and pressed play. I watched her instead of the screen, and I started documenting. This wasn't grief anymore. This was reconnaissance. She didn't change her patterns. That was her mistake. She thought I was still asleep. The shared car app gave me more than I expected. Most people forget how closely vehicles are tracked these days. Maintenance logs, GPS pings, destination history. I accessed it through the garage login, the same one I'd set up years ago when we bought the SUV together. She never asked me to change it. The log showed regular visits to the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or so she told me. Except the car location didn't match. Gym check-ins were always logged between 6:45 and 8 p.m. But her car parked in a residential neighborhood 10 miles away. Same house, every time. Small cul-de-sac, no fitness centers nearby. I ran the address through county property records. Belonged to a man named Marcus. Last name didn't ring a bell. Not a coworker. Not a family friend. I looked back at the Carla messages. Windows open. Same time Thursday. Garage code still works. I cross-referenced the timestamps with her car location. They matched perfectly, so I dug deeper. Her phone had once synced backups automatically to a desktop we kept in the home office. She never turned off the feature. I found a cache of photos she probably thought were deleted, filtered selfies, bathroom mirrors, low-lit snapshots I knew weren't taken in our house. One stood out, a shot of her holding a wine glass, shirt slightly off one shoulder, a man's hand just barely visible near her hip. The frame was cropped, but not enough. There was no Carla, just Marcus. Voice memos surfaced next, saved in a cloud folder she probably forgot to delete. One was from her friend Dana. She said she doesn't respect him, thinks he won't leave, says he's too soft to do anything. My jaw clenched, not from rage, from focus. Soft. She thought silence was softness. It wasn't. It was strategy. That night, we had dinner like always. Stir-fry and canned wine. She told me about a fake budget meeting that had run long. I nodded, asked questions. She smiled. I went to bed early. She stayed up watching something on her tablet. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to see more clearly. I had the location. I had the name. I had the proof. Now I needed the plan. Once the momentum started, it was easy to keep moving. Each lie opened a door. Each door led to something she thought she'd locked behind her. I compiled quietly, screenshots of text logs, timestamps from the car tracker, records from our credit card accounts, and images recovered from the cloud. The photo with Marcus's hand became a centerpiece. Next came the emails. She used the same recovery address for everything. Password resets landed in her primary inbox, a rookie mistake. I accessed a forgotten Gmail tied to her Etsy account. Inside were receipts for reservations she never mentioned. 2 nights at a boutique hotel downtown, 1 booking tagged. Spa package for 2. That was 3 weeks ago. She told me she was attending a team building overnight. The folder also held travel confirmations, a weekend booked for next month in Asheville. Not with me. I checked my calendar. That same weekend, she said she'd be visiting her mother. The final piece came through audio, not from her, but from Dana again. She'd sent it through a voice memo. I found it archived among her files. She told me he's comfortable, but invisible. Said it's like being married to a well-meaning ghost. Said if he ever found out, he'd probably just fold. A pause. Then laughter. 2 women. Unfiltered. She said he's the kind of guy who'd probably help pack her bags if she asked nicely. I stared at the waveform of the audio file long after it ended. Not because I needed to hear it again, but because I was studying the sound of my own erasure. Invisibility. Ghost. Fold. She didn't just check out of the marriage, She built her escape plan around the idea that I'd stay passive, that I couldn't. But what she didn't realize was that softness is not absence of strength, it's restraint, and I wasn't folding. I was finalizing. That night, she curled up next to me in bed like nothing had changed, like she hadn't rewritten our life and expected me to read the script blind. I let her. She fell asleep faster than usual. Her breathing deepened, relaxed. I lay awake beside her, eyes open, pulse steady, planning my withdrawal not from emotion. I'd already withdrawn from that, but from the infrastructure of our life. Soon, the evidence wouldn't just be digital. It would be in the mailbox, in legal language, in frozen assets and rerouted accounts. She'd built her freedom on a fiction. I was about to deliver the reality. It happened during the simplest moment. No theatrics, no speeches. Just the two of us on the couch, sharing space we no longer shared at all. She was eating popcorn, curled in her favorite throw blanket, half watching a crime drama. The kind we used to narrate together, poking fun at bad dialogue and guessing the twists before the first commercial. Now she watched alone. I sat beside her in silence, pretending to scroll my phone. I wasn't reading. I was studying. She laughed at something on screen, glanced over, and nudged the bowl toward me. Want some? I took a handful, nodded. She smiled, eyes already drifting back to the TV. That was the moment. It wasn't rage or sorrow or disbelief. It was clarity. She had no idea I knew. No inkling that the man she believed was blind and soft was, in fact, 10 steps ahead. She didn't even glance at me long enough to suspect. And I realized, I was already gone. Just not physically. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I'd left weeks ago. She just hadn't noticed the silence had meaning. That's what broke me, not the betrayal itself, but how easily she believed I'd tolerate it forever. She thought she could juggle Marcus and me like mismatched accessories, wear one for comfort, the other for thrill, switch them as needed. But I wasn't an accessory. I was the foundation, and she'd cracked it for a punchline. That night I didn't sleep. I lay beside her, listening to the soft rhythm of her breath, wondering how long she'd rehearsed the joke before delivering it. I could do better blind. She thought it was clever, thought it made her seem bold, untouchable. But all it did was confirm what the data already told me. She didn't value me. Not in private. Not in public. Not even in passing. I thought back to the man I was 5 years ago, hopeful, steady, proud to build a life with her. He'd be ashamed of who he'd become. But not of what he was about to do. The switch had flipped. Not from love to hate. I didn't hate her. Not even close. What I felt was colder. More final. Indifference. And once that sets in, there's no recovery. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning forgiveness. I was planning exit. The next phase would be legal. Quiet. Absolute. She wouldn't see it coming. Not because I was hiding, but because she was too busy looking away. I sat across from the attorney 2 days later. Neutral office, frosted glass, leather chairs that creaked when you shifted your weight too much. His tie was crooked, but his mind wasn't. I laid out the facts without drama. Just dates, documents, and patterns. He asked if I wanted confrontation or resolution. Neither, I said. I want protection. First move, freeze the joint accounts. Quietly. I left enough to avoid suspicion, just trimmed the fat and secured my personal assets. My paycheck rerouted to a new bank under my name alone. Second, legal protections. Nothing confrontational, just safeguards, quiet measures to ensure that if she attempted to pull funds or steer the process unfairly, there'd be barriers in place. He nodded, impressed. You're doing this smart. I wasn't here for praise. I was here to start cutting ties with surgical precision. That evening I packed a travel bag with essentials, not a suitcase, not dramatic, just what I needed to move fast if I had to. I stored it at Leo's place, one of the few friends who never liked her and never pretended to. He opened the closet for me without asking. When? He asked quietly. Soon. The next day, I pulled my name off the mortgage cosign. Technically we were still married, but our lender had an opt-out clause I'd built into the refinance paperwork last year. Back then, I'd added it because I thought she might want more independence. Now it protected me from liability. She noticed none of it. She was too busy planning her business trip, the Asheville weekend. I saw the hotel confirmation come through her email. She didn't even change the password. I sat at the kitchen island while she packed. She hummed while folding sweaters, paused only to ask if I'd mind feeding the dog while she was stuck in seminars. I said sure. She kissed my cheek again. Dry, thoughtless, familiar. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel relief or sorrow. I felt control. And control, after so much false normal, felt like oxygen. I spent the weekend not sulking, but organizing. Sorting backup copies, printing photos, labeling files, cataloging receipts. I wasn't preparing for war. I was preparing for extraction. The plan wasn't revenge. It was release. Soon she'd feel it too, the pressure shift when the weight she mocked stopped holding her up. The final night played out like every other, deceptively ordinary. That was the brilliance of it. She thought the stage was unchanged, the lights still fixed on her performance. She walked in the door just after 7, suitcase bumping into the threshold. I stood in the kitchen, rinsing a pan. She called out, "I'm starving. Let's do takeout." I nodded, still facing the sink. "Sure. You pick." Her heels clicked down the hallway, suitcase dragged behind like an afterthought. She moved around the house like a woman unwatched, unaware. And that's how I let her move. She came back into the kitchen wearing one of those faux apology smiles. "I know I promised to bring back those local chocolates, but I totally forgot." I dried the pan slowly. "It's okay." She studied my face for a second longer than usual. Maybe something flickered. But then her phone buzzed, and the moment passed. We ate in the living room, boxes of noodles between us. She talked about fake sessions, imaginary panels, the same tired buzzwords she'd practiced for years. I nodded in all the right places. Then came the last dig. Something small. A toss-away line as she picked at her food. "If I ran the world, you'd be in charge of watching doors and keeping tea warm. You'd be perfect at that." I looked at her then. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just clarity. She didn't even realize she'd done it. Didn't see the line between humor and erosion. She never had. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd given her in weeks. "You said something once," I said, setting my box aside. She cocked her head. "Yeah?" I stood and walked to the light switch. "You said you could do better blind." She blinked, half smiling, unsure. "What?" I turned off the lights. The room fell into soft darkness. Only the flicker from the TV remained, casting shifting shadows across her face. "I'll let you try," I said calmly. She chuckled, thinking it was just another one of our strange little back and forths. But I'd already said goodbye. She just hadn't heard it yet. That night I slept on the couch. Not because of tension, but because I needed the separation, the symbolic line. While she slept, I placed the final folder in my briefcase. Not digital now. Printed. Labeled. Finalized. There would be no yelling. No confrontation. No final argument to tie things up in some melodramatic bow. Just quiet exit. Absolute and irreversible. By morning, she would be speaking to absence. I woke before the sun. No alarm. No sound. Just instinct, clean, surgical. She was still in bed when I left the bedroom door cracked behind me. The house felt heavier than usual, like it knew what I was about to do. I moved through it one last time. Not to remember. I'd done enough remembering, but to make sure everything was where it needed to be. On the kitchen counter, I placed the folder, thick with printouts, the text logs, the reservation receipts, the voice memo transcripts. At the top, a single sheet, divorce filings. Beside it, the house key. No note. No dramatic goodbye. I wasn't leaving to punish. I was leaving to preserve what was left of myself. By 6:30, I locked the door behind me and pulled out of the driveway for the last time. The air was cold, crisp. I rolled the window down and let it sting. It felt like stepping out of a soundproof room into open space. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even look back. At Leo's place, I unloaded the essentials I'd packed weeks ago. My suit was already hanging in his closet, my files tucked away in a locked drawer. I sat on his porch with a cup of black coffee and watched the light change. My phone buzzed at 7:12 a.m., her first text. "Where are you?" Then another. "You left the car? What is this?" They kept coming, escalating in urgency, confusion, then disbelief. A call followed. Then another. I let them ring. By 8:30, she was emailing. By 10 o'clock, the lawyer confirmed the papers had been officially filed and received. He added that the financial protections were holding. Joint accounts sealed. My assets secured. Her access frozen. By noon, the silence shifted. Not mine, hers. She had no script for this, no punchline. Mutual friends began reaching out by midweek, some cautiously, some directly. They'd seen the documents, heard whispers. Photos she thought were private had surfaced. Conversations she'd had in confidence, forwarded, exposed. Not by me. I hadn't leaked anything. People talk when the mask falls. Marcus vanished fast. A quiet departure from something never meant to last. She reached for him, and he let her fall. Her reputation, so curated, so rehearsed, cracked. Not from cruelty, from consequences. Meanwhile, I worked from Leo's spare room. Simple meals, morning walks, no chaos, no noise. Not triumphant, but free. She'd mocked. I'd moved. She lost. Freedom didn't feel like celebration. It felt like air returning to lungs that forgot how to breathe. The first week passed in measured stillness. I woke at 6, ran 3 miles before sunrise, then worked in Leo's guest room, answering emails with a new clarity. My calendar no longer carried her false appointments. The noise was gone. Her messages kept coming, shorter now, more fragmented. First questions, then disbelief, then anger disguised as confusion. You just left? This is how you handle problems? After everything I've done for us? I never replied. Not once. Not because I didn't have words, but because the absence was louder. By the second week, the silence had turned on her. Mutual friends began pulling back. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in increments. Invitations rescinded. Messages ignored. The same people who once laughed at her jokes now walked on eggshells. She'd underestimated how quickly support thins when the narrative breaks. And the photo, the one with Marcus's hand, made its rounds. Not from me. From someone in her circle. Screenshots always find a way. I heard Marcus blocked her. Company directory scrubbed. His apartment? Listed for sublease. He vanished faster than the truth could catch up. She called Leo once. I was sitting 5 feet away. He let it ring, then looked at me. She's scrambling, he said. You okay? I nodded. I wasn't okay, not really, but I was aligned. There's a difference. I went back to the house once, accompanied by my lawyer and an independent evaluator. No words exchanged. Just a list. Divide assets. Photograph items. 1 hour, no contact. She stayed upstairs. I didn't glance at the railing. I signed the final documents at a long oak table in a conference room downtown. No fanfare. Just a signature, a finality. When it was over, I stood on the sidewalk for a long minute, just letting the weight lift. Healing didn't come as a rush. It came as space, the kind she never left me when we were together. There were moments I missed the idea of her, the image I once loved, the version that never existed, except in early years and faded memories. But I didn't want her back. Not even as a memory. I started writing again. Just for myself. Morning pages. Half thoughts and quiet truths. It helped. I didn't chase new love. Didn't put myself out there. I just rebuilt, slow, steady, real. And in that quiet, I found peace. She had her punchline. I had the last word. It was silence.